For more on the war in Ukraine, CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay joins me now from Kyiv. Hey there, Chris. Thank you for your time today. So the long-awaited effort to evacuate people from that steel plant in Mariupol began on Sunday. What are you hearing about how this is all going?
Hi, Caitlin. Yeah, so the good news is that evacuation has finally begun. We're told by the Ukrainian government that more than 100 civilians, that's mostly women, children, and the elderly, have been taken out and are among the very first evacuees from that steel mill and on their way to Zaporizhia. Should be arriving tomorrow. There's been a bit of a delay. They hope to get them there by today, but the roads in that part of Ukraine are bombed out and virtually non-existent at this point. Another evacuation is supposed to take place tomorrow morning around 8 a.m. local. The bad news is the situation is extremely volatile in and around the city. Russian forces have fired upon humanitarian corridors in the past, and there are still about 100,000 people in the city of Mariupol, and there are still hundreds of people estimated to still be inside that steel mill, although much of it has been bombed, and so it's very precarious for everybody, both in and around the steel mill.
Yeah, just watching footage, seeing people evacuate, it just looks like an extremely difficult task to get people out, especially elderly and children. Meanwhile, Russian troops have dissolved the Ukrainian leadership in the port city of Kherson, which is west of Mariupol. They've installed their new leaders there. What do we know about what Russians are actually doing there?
Kherson is a really interesting case because it was the very first and so far the largest Ukrainian city to fall into Russian hands. So what we're seeing there, it could be a template for what's to come, perhaps in eastern Ukraine, as Russia makes further advances into that part of the country. Something really indicative was the fact that they've introduced the ruble now as the official currency, is something that seems sort of mundane, but when you think about it, it's something that's also essential to a national identity. If they were to dissolve the U.S. dollar, it would be kind of a shock for us as well. And it's part of the overarching idea behind these accusations of genocide in Ukraine. It's something we've heard not just from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but also from the U.S. President Joe Biden, because it's not just the mass slaughter of Ukrainian people, which is something that's happening here, don't get me wrong, but it's also the erasure of the Ukrainian identity. It's removing things that help people identify as Ukrainian, from something as simple as the currency or to something like the Ukrainian flag. In fact, in parts of Kherson and the surrounding area, they're starting to raise the Russian flag, or have been doing so for some time. There are even reports we've heard from IDPs, internally displaced people, who have left now occupied portions of Ukraine, of soldiers raising the old Soviet flag as well. So anything to sow fear and to interfere with what it means to be a Ukrainian.
That's really jarring, especially putting the Soviet flag. I can't imagine. What we're seeing here, is this kind of any indication of a game plan in terms of what Russia wants to do longer term in Ukraine?
It certainly suggests that's the case. In fact, it's not the first time we've seen these types of tactics. We have to recall that eastern Ukraine, specifically, the Donbass region, parts of it have long been embroiled in war. There are, separatist-backed movements there, Russian-backed separatist movements, I should say, that have already taken steps in these directions ever since war broke out there in 2014. We've seen it in Crimea, that the part of the peninsula south of Ukraine. I shouldn't say south of Ukraine. It is still recognized as Ukraine, except by Russia, which annexed it in 2014. And we've seen things like this in other Russian-occupied countries in its in immediate orbit, like in Georgia, in particular the South Ossetia region that has claimed independence ever since a war was fought there in 2008. In fact, right now, that region is beginning a referendum to actually join Russia. These types of things have been going on for well over a decade in the region, and it's why the United States has warned about Russia carrying on this type of behavior beyond Ukraine's borders. In fact, to Ukraine's western border, we've started to see very similar signs in the region of Transnistria, this pro-Kremlin breakaway region of Moldova, where you've started to see strange explosions all of a sudden. Russia has said already that they hope that these explosions don't destabilize the region and force them to intervene. Moldova is scared that this is a false flag attack, and Russia is going to use it as a pretense to invade. So we've seen this all before, and it could very well be something that we see further down the road beyond Ukraine as well.
All right, Chris Livesay in Kyiv, Ukraine. As always, stay safe, and thank you for your reporting.
Thanks, Caitlin.